డాకో 360 డాకో 360 వెన్నంటి మన తోడై ఉండే డాకో 360 ఆయుర్వేద హోమియోపతి యునాని న్యూట్రిషన్ వంటి ఆన్లైన్ వైద్య సేవలను అందిస్తుందండి.
Hi, welcome to Telugu TV show. So my name is Shreya Tangirala, and I'm a senior from South Lakes High School in Northern Virginia in Fairfax County. And so today I wanted to ask Sant Gupta ji and Svilekha Pale ji some questions about their recent action about making Diwali a holiday in Fairfax County and how to see how that will affect me as a student. Can both of you please introduce yourselves?
Sure, Shreya. I am Srilekha Pale. Namaste to one and all. I am a Fairfax County mom. I have a child currently in Fairfax County. I'm a middle school PTA president, but also like to be very actively involved in the temple. I was the past temple president and American Hindu Coalition board member. More than anything, I would like to introduce myself as a very active participant in community and always looks out for community's best interests.
My name is Sant Gupta. I've lived in this area for close to 22 years. By the time I came, my children had already left college even, let alone schools. I have been very active with issues relating to Hinduism. So I represented Hinduism in interfaith dialogue settings. I'm actively involved with VHP of America, a Hindu American Foundation, and Gopio and Chinmaya Mission, and a whole host of other endeavors in the local area.
That's great to know about you guys. So about the topic that we're going to be discussing today, I was wondering if you guys could first just explain the recent announcement by the Fairfax County School Board regarding the upcoming school year calendar and how that would impact the Hindu community.
So in the Fairfax County, which is one of the largest school systems in Northern Virginia, has had a large number of Hindu population, and lots of kids go to schools. But Hindus' primary festival, Diwali, was never recognized as something of great importance. So many years ago, we made some serious efforts, and it was surprising to see that the school system or the school board actually declined. But then they realized that they cannot really sustain their decision. So a task force was created, and the board decided to really understand the diversity of community and the faiths in this area. And I happened to be quite active, so I was the first person who was among a group of about 12 people who were polled, and we discussed the significance and the importance of making certain that we and our community, along with other faith communities, are properly represented. That's how the whole thing got started. And then we made a large number of submissions, and they finally recognized that. And the end result, and we'll go in some more details, was that very recently, the school board overwhelmingly accepted making Diwali a day on which the school will be actually closed, so that Hindus can actually celebrate Diwali without having to take a day off when it was not recognized by the system.
Yeah, that's great. So coming back to what you said about changing the school calendar, so it's my understanding that the guiding factors of changing this calendar is law, policy, and leadership. So can you maybe elaborate on what that means for the community that might not understand what exactly goes into the process? So maybe just elaborate a little bit more on the things that went into making this change.
Sure. One of the most important aspects of our endeavor was to have a community group. Individuals don't count as much as the community. In a democratic system, what counts most is the plurality and the commitment and support of the community. So one of my first tasks was to solicit assistance and cooperation and involvement of multiple organizations in the area. For example, as Srilekha said, American Hindu Coalition was one. So was Chinmaya Mission, and Hindu American Foundation, and HSS, and VHP of America, Durga Temple, Rajdhani Mandir, and host of other organizations, essentially conveying to the board that it is not just one person. And also a bunch of students' parents who are directly and most effectively impacted. So the school board saw that our effort is not just a small group among our community, but the entire community is behind it, and that made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's great. So for the next question, maybe Sudekaji, you can answer a little bit, talk about a little bit about this. So maybe, so who are the stakeholders of the community and how long were you working towards achieving this goal? And maybe you can just elaborate a little bit on the journey and to how you got here to achieving this goal.
Shreya, that's actually a wonderful question. Any monumental thing such as this, it doesn't happen by one person. As Mr. Gupta stated, there were multiple religious leaders and community members, school board members, parents, and students that were big time advocates of it. Just to kind of give you background, Shreya, we have about 180,000 Indian Americans in this county, and out of which about 150,000 Hindu American students. So that's a pretty significant number to compare to. And if you're looking at national standards, Fairfax County Public School is 7th largest in the country. So I think going back to your previous questions, when Superintendent of Fairfax County and School Board is considering this action, they're not only looking at advocacy of all these faith leaders and community leaders, but they also have to factor in several other policies. It has to be secular in such a way that they can't make these decisions in blind sight. They want to look at attendance rates and see which holidays has the most attendance issues with regards to student absences and also teacher absences. And the second thing that they also have to consider is this going to really affect the number of instructional days from school? Because school is required to provide 180 days of instructions and 990 hours of instructions in order for kids to be. So there are several factors that come into consideration. So when Mr. Gupta and other members of this committee and myself were presenting the calendar, we came up with multiple comprehensive versions of this calendar to show to the school board that how we can still continue to celebrate the entire diversity and excellent fabric of this Fairfax County that involves Jewish students, Hindu students, Muslim students, and still ensure we come up with a comprehensive calendar that does not affect the instructional portion of students, because at the end of the day, quality of education and instructional hours do matter. So I think kudos to this entire steering interfaith committee, religious leaders and student body members and community members that kind of showed to the school board saying that you can be innovative, you can be creative and still respect the Hindu Americans, Muslim Americans, Jewish Americans, and give them the holiday they deserve, and not just talk about diversity, actually exhibit the diversity when there is a chance to exhibit the diversity. So that's how comprehensive these decisions are made. It does take a lot of effort and a lot of noosing around the calendar to come up with this solution.
Yeah, wow. So it's really nice to hear that you had to take it and a lot of things into consideration. But when you had to consider so many things, I'm sure that it wasn't a very easy path, that you guys must have faced some obstacles. So maybe each of you can also maybe share some obstacles that you faced and how did you overcome them to be able to take this action?
So let me take that first. So it is typically not uncommon to see people getting very enthusiastic about something important, and they get all riled up. And as you know, anybody can call the superintendent of schools. Everybody can call the school board. All of that is public information. But suddenly, individuals realize that their enthusiasm is not likely to result into something permanent immediately. So what we had to do was to convey to people, all parents and other organizations, individuals, that we have to have a strategy, number one. Number two, to be successful, you have to understand how the system actually works. Once you know how the system works, then you can come up with ways and divide the work to make certain that we do the right thing. Working hard alone is not enough. And then we can regroup again to see, hey, listen, this is what we tried. It didn't work. What else should we do? And finally, to learn from other people's experience, especially Jewish people. And as Sri Lanka has known a lot of Jewish people, I have also known a lot of synagogues and Jewish rabbis and so on. And they have struggled just like we have, because we are a minority community and so are they. And this way, we were able to come up with the most effective way to deal with it without wasting a lot of our time. After all, each one of us are very busy in their own lives, their careers, and other activities. So we wanted to optimize and not be a nuisance to the decision makers. And in the end, it all worked very well because people understood that working together is the only way to move forward.
Shreya, just in addition to Mr. Gupta eloquently said, Jewish community leaders were very, very proactive. They were very organized. They kind of led our group. And as a Hindu Americans and Sikh Americans, Jain Americans, myself and Mr. Gupta were adamant about saying that we want to represent our communities and get them ahead. But I have to give kudos to Jewish American leaders that were very focused on ensuring that this action indeed kind of take place. But also to add to that, the first time when we presented the calendar, one thing our viewers need to understand is it's important we all are politically active. Although we consider politics as chaos, but unless you are active in politics, nothing happens, because it's important you understand the strategic process, like Mr. Gupta just mentioned. Each one of us were challenged to have individual conversations with these board members. I myself had at least 5 individual conversations with the individual board members, out of which 4 of them voted yes, right? Once you start having individual conversation, you can actually explain where you're coming from. You go to them with not emotional stuff like Mr. Gupta mentioned, which doesn't get much, but go to them with an objective data saying that, hey, we have 5% of students. Diwali is celebrated mainly at night with the firecrackers, but they're really not practicing the dharma of getting up in the morning, taking a head shower like we do as a traditional means, going to the temple, wearing the new clothes, giving respect to the God. I mean, the Sanatan dharma is not practiced. When there is school, they just come in and do firecrackers, and our kids tend to think that is Diwali, which you and I know that Diwali is not that. It is a practice. It's actually a spiritual, religious, and cultural festival for us. So I think once you start explaining to these board members the importance of Diwali, the first time I spoke to the board member, she said, but don't you just light crackers in the night? Why do you need the day off? Right? So I literally had to kind of go back and explain the essence of Diwali. So those are the building relationships that we need to have with our community leaders, political leaders, and strategical partners with Jewish community, Muslim communities, in order to make sure this monumental thing happens. So it wasn't an easy path. We had a lot of obstacles, but we got there because we were very organized and we took the lead, not just passive, but active lead in communicating with each other.
Yeah, and I will want to add that I hope people who are watching this get encouraged and take this forward. And it is not rocket science. You know, we live in a democracy. That means each one of us have the right and the obligation to be active. And if you reach out to your school board members and make a case and develop the community support, anybody can do that. And our audience who are watching this are welcome to reach Sri Lekha or myself so that we can give them our benefit of our experience, but they can do it. It is not something which is so monumental. And if you say, oh my God, you know, I don't have to do it, let somebody else do it. Well, there is no somebody else. You are it. If you can do it, you will achieve great results.
Yeah, that's very inspirational. And kind of adding on to that, that leads me to my next question. To the both of you, what process do you suggest that other Hindu leaders within different counties where they don't have this holiday, where this action hasn't been taken, what process do you suggest that they can go through to make it happen in their community? Or do you have any message to other Hindu community leaders in other counties so that they will be able to replicate this process?
So Shreya, what I can say is first thing, I think I learned this concept from Mr. Gupta. You just really have to acknowledge that this is very important for us, right? Unless we as Hindu Americans, Sikh Americans, and Jain Americans realize that this is a big deal for us, we will not be able to project ourselves out positively and assertively to our community leaders. I think as Hindu parents, once we agree, these parents have to come together and strategically come up with objective stats. How many students do we have in each county? How many students are being absent in each county? What other partners you can have? Because it's not just about you. I always say you have to partner with other minority communities and interfaith communities. Go to Jewish students and say, what about Rosh Hashanah? What about Yom Kippur? I know it's very important for you all. How many students are being affected? Is this where the kids can have professional holidays, or are we able to also have what is called as like regular holidays? So I think come up with some very good objective data and mobilize your community, and then take it to the school board and take it to the superintendent. And so I think those are the strategical methodology to go to. And I also talk about just the White House Diwali too, because when it happened in 2009 with Obama era, and it still continues up until now, it was the Hindu community leaders and Sikh and Jain community leaders throughout the country that kind of mobilized in an organized manner to make it happen. Now we just really have to take it a step up and see, how do you advocate for a national holiday? Because so kids like you, when you have your own children, you wouldn't have to face the battle like we are facing. We are actually moving the path forward to all of you, and engaging elected official, congressional candidates and senatorial candidates to say that this is very important. There are 1.3 billion Hindus in this world. So let's please respect the contributions of this Hindu, Sikh, and Jain Americans, and make it as a public holiday. So that should be our next step too.
Sure. And keep in mind, it took years of effort to get US Postal Service to issue a Diwali stamp. And it was a similar concept again, just like Sri Lekha mentioned, mobilize a community, find out how the system works, and be persistent. It is never a sprint, it's a marathon. Don't expect results overnight. Don't get discouraged. Talk to people, continuously look for ways to go around the obstacles, and it can be done.
Yeah, kind of circling, that's great to hear. So also circling back to what Srilekha ji said about how they had to consider student absences, teacher absences, and all those types of factors when making this action. I was just wondering, since there are many days that are religiously significant for Hindus, I was just wondering why you chose Diwali as a holiday to make as a holiday for the Fairfax County calendar. And I was wondering if you guys considered any other holidays and what was the process in choosing this specific date?
Shri, I mean, I feel Diwali is our global festivals that every one of us celebrate, right? Not just Hindus, but Sikhs and not just Indian Americans. I mean, Caribbean Americans that are here, all kinds of Indian diaspora in this country that's kind of celebrate. So I think Diwali, we felt like it is a major festival for the country, and it is a festival that actually unifies us. Just like the way I said before, spiritually, religiously, and culturally, there is no other festival that I can think of that actually unifies us in such a manner. One more thing that I would like to add from mobilization perspective, Shreya, we should never forget to look around the counties, right? One of the things that when data perspective that we looked around is, what is Prince William County, our neighboring county, doing? Because those kind of data really helps when you go to school boards and say, because in order for the school boards to have premier workforce in the Fairfax County, they have to get teachers from outside of the counties too. So if outside of the counties are giving the Diwali day off, which in this case they are, Arlington County and Prince William County, Loudoun County, then it is really not fair for Fairfax County students not to have, because teachers get affected. So I think bringing back to the point that it is an inconvenience for teachers and students too, and poses a lot of operational challenges, really helps.
Yeah, no, this is a great point, Sri Lekha, you mentioned. And students can put pressure, their parents can put pressure, but so it's a whole group of people. And one last thing I will say, somebody has to take initiative. Nothing moves forward if it is all an amorphous group. You have to have at least a few people who have the leadership qualities, who are respected in the community, who can rally the support around a certain cause. And answering your question, Diwali, like Sri Lekha said, is the most important and prominent festival associated with Hinduism. And there are others too. For example, Pongal is another one, and so is Holi. But that's one step at a time. But this is at least, it puts Hindus and Hindu culture and faith in religion on the board. And that's the first step. And now, Shreya, you are there. So maybe 10 years from now, you can petition for the next holiday.
Sure, definitely. And I just had one last question, kind of a more technical aspect about this action. So since Diwali comes at a different date every year, it doesn't follow this calendar that we follow here, right? So I was wondering who provides the information about what date to use to the county, because how does the county know what date to use to give the holiday?
Shreya,
It's an
that's
excellent
actually
question.
a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah,
Go
it's
ahead.
an excellent question. We have told them, and they are fully aware of it, that especially the festivals which follow moon as a reference point, which is what Diwali does, they know, and they will reach out to prominent Hindu leaders to every year before they publish the calendar for the following year to know for sure what date is Diwali going to be this year and the next year. And they do that every year. Okay. It's not like 25th of December is Christmas, regardless. That it doesn't work that way. And they are very aware of that. Same thing happens, by the way, to Jewish holidays and also Muslim holidays. So you're right. They are sensitive to that.
Got it. That makes sense. So that's all that I had for today. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much for listening to us. And I hope our audience feels good about what they heard and it inspires them to action. Okay. Bye-bye.
Namaste, Telugu TV. Thank you to all.